Buy my kidney, sir. Mommy operation after in 2 days.
The words were shaky, almost swallowed by the noise of the busy Manila street. A little girl, no older than 12, stood barefoot by the side of the road, clutching a crumpled cardboard sign. Her hair was tied into a messy ponytail, her uniform stained and too small for her growing body. She looked like a child who hadn't eaten properly in days, but her eyes, though tired, were burning with something fierce, desperation. The bikers stopped. They were a group of 6, roaring engines, leather jackets, mirrored helmets. To most people, they looked intimidating, the kind you'd avoid making eye contact with. They called themselves the Iron Sons, a name that used to strike fear in small towns. But lately, after one of their own died in an accident, they changed. They weren't saints, but they had decided that if they were going to ride, they'd ride for something good. Their leader, a tall man with a scar running across his left cheek, took off his helmet. His name was Marco. He'd been through things: jail, addiction, heartbreak. He looked at the girl, then at the cardboard.
Kid, what did you say?
He asked, voice rough but gentle. She repeated, almost whispering this time.
Buy my kidney, sir. Please. My mommy, operation in 2 days. Doctor said no operation, she die.
The words pierced through the rumble of the engines, slicing right through the tough exterior of the bikers. Marco frowned.
Where's your mom?
The girl pointed to a small alleyway.
In the house, sir. I try sell candies, no one buy. So I think maybe sell kidney. I hear on TV people need kidney, right?
Her innocence broke something inside him. The other bikers exchanged looks. They'd all grown up rough, some orphans, some abandoned, but hearing that come from a child's mouth felt unbearable. Marco crouched down to her level.
What's your name, kid? Leah,
she said softly.
My mommy name Anna. She cleaned her before in hotel, but she's sick now. They say kidney fail.
Marco sighed and stood up, rubbing his neck.
Show us.
She led them through the narrow alley, where laundry hung between walls and children played with bottle caps. The smell of fried fish mixed with diesel. Inside a small, dim room, a woman lay on a thin mattress. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Beside her was an empty medicine box and a single half-eaten piece of bread.
Good afternoon, ma'am,
Marco said awkwardly. The woman tried to sit up, but Leah rushed to her.
Mommy, they're bikers. Maybe they buy my kidney,
she said eagerly. Marco felt his heart sink. The mother's eyes widened in shock.
Leah. No. What are you saying?
She turned to Marco, tears forming.
Sir, I'm sorry. She doesn't understand. She's scared. I told her not to worry, but...
Her voice cracked.
I can't afford the operation. The doctor said. I have 2 days.
Marco felt a lump in his throat. He looked around the room. Nothing but an old fan, a broken chair, and a faded photo of a man in uniform.
Your husband?
He asked gently. The woman nodded.
He died 3 years ago. Construction accident.
The silence that followed was heavy. Even the street noise outside seemed to fade. One of the bikers, Juno, who was the group's mechanic, took off his gloves and whispered,
Boss, maybe we can call someone, charity or something?
Marco shook his head slowly.
Charities take time. She doesn't have that.
He turned back to Leah.
Kid, no one's buying your kidney. But we'll figure something out, okay?
Leah looked confused.
But sir, we don't have money.
Marco smiled faintly.
Then we'll make some.
He pulled out his wallet, barely a few hundred pesos. The others did the same, pooling what little they had. It wasn't enough for a hospital bill, not even close. But it was something. Then Marco looked at his bike, a custom Harley he'd built with his late brother. It was his pride, his identity. He'd sworn he'd never sell it. But when he saw Leah holding her mother's hand, whispering prayers through tears, something inside him shifted. He stood abruptly.
Wait here.
The bikers followed him outside.
Boss, what's the plan?
One asked. Marco exhaled.
I'm selling the Harley.
The group went silent.
What? Marco, that's... I know what it is,
he interrupted.
But I've been riding for years trying to find purpose. Maybe this is it.
Within an hour, Marco had made a few calls. A collector from Makati had been eyeing his bike for months. The man offered a good price. Enough to pay for a surgery, maybe even more. By the time Marco returned that evening, his bike was gone, and his pocket was heavy with cash. He handed it to the mother without a word.
Sir, what is this?
She stammered. Payment, he said simply.
For something more valuable than a bike.
The woman cried, clutching his hands. Leah hugged his leg tightly.
Thank you, sir. I promise, one day I give you back.
He smiled and ruffled her hair.
Just promise me you'll take care of your mom. That's all.
The next day, Marco and his bikers accompanied them to the hospital. They spoke with the doctors, signed forms, and waited in the lobby through the long night. The surgery was complicated but successful. When the doctor came out, smiling, Marco finally exhaled the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Leah ran up to him, tears streaming down her cheeks.
Sir! Mommy's okay. She's okay.
Marco laughed, a deep, relieved laugh that echoed through the sterile hallways. But that wasn't the end. 2 days later, a video began circulating online. A nurse had secretly recorded Leah hugging the bikers, thanking them, saying,
They buy no kidney, they buy hope.
The video went viral. People were moved by the story, the little girl's innocence, the biker's selfless act. Donations started pouring in from strangers around the world. The hospital was paid in full, and even more money came in, enough to help other families in the ward. When reporters found the bikers, Marco simply said,
We didn't do it for fame. We just did what humans should do.
But what touched everyone most was what happened a month later. The Iron Sons were back on the road, this time on borrowed bikes. They rode through small towns, leaving envelopes of money at orphanages and hospitals, helping people who had no one to help them. They called it the Kindness Ride. And wherever they went, people recognized them, not as outlaws, but as heroes. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marco sat on the hood of their truck, staring at the orange sky. Leah and her mother arrived, carrying home-cooked food.
Sir,
Leah said shyly, handing him a small package.
Mommy and I make this for you. You help us live. So we make something for your heart.
He opened it. Inside was a tiny wooden carving of a motorcycle, rough but made with love. On the bottom, written in childish handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for buying my hope." Marco blinked hard, pretending there was dust in his eye.
This,
he said softly,
is worth more than any Harley.
The group ate together that night, laughter mixing with the hum of crickets. For the first time in a long time, Marco felt peace. Not the kind that comes from speed or freedom, but the kind that comes from doing something right. Months passed. Leah's mother regained her strength and found a new job. Leah went back to school. She started writing letters to the bikers, each ending with,
I want to be like you, someone who saves people.
Years later, when Leah graduated high school, Marco and his crew showed up, not in leathers this time, but in clean shirts, holding flowers. The crowd clapped when she received her diploma. She spotted them from the stage and waved, tears glistening in her eyes. After the ceremony, she ran to them and hugged Marco tightly.
Sir, I'm studying nursing. One day I'll help people like you helped us.
Marco smiled, his voice thick with emotion.
You already are, kid. You already are.
The story of Liao and the bikers spread far beyond their town, across oceans, across languages. It wasn't just about a little girl and her sick mother anymore. It became a story of compassion that reminded everyone what being human truly meant. It showed that sometimes the ones who seem roughest carry the softest hearts. That sometimes salvation doesn't come from wealth or status, but from ordinary people choosing kindness when it matters most. And though Marco never rode his Harley again, he found something far better, a reason to keep going. Every year after that, the kindness ride continued. They helped a fisherman's family rebuild their boat after a typhoon, bought wheelchairs for disabled kids, repaired roofs for widows. Each time, they carried Leah's words with them like a badge of honor, by no kidney. By hope. On the 5th anniversary of Anna's surgery, they visited her again. She was healthy now, her eyes bright with gratitude. Liao was grown, studying medicine, her dream clear, to work in a free clinic for the poor. As they shared coffee in the small house, Marco looked around. The same cracked walls, but filled with laughter now. The same alley, but filled with life. He stood up to leave, putting on his helmet. Liao stopped him and said,
Sir, when I'm a doctor, you'll ride again. I'll buy you a new Harley.
Marco chuckled.
Deal.
He rode off into the evening on a borrowed bike, the wind carrying the sound of his laughter. And though the world didn't know his name, somewhere out there, a little girl once desperate enough to sell her kidney had learned something far more valuable, that kindness can heal not just bodies, but souls. The story of Liao and the bikers became a whisper passed from one person to another, a story that reminded people everywhere, from Manila to New York, that humanity still had hope. And sometimes, hope comes riding on two wheels.